If your team members aren't accounted for all of the materials they're using on a job, how much more do you have to sell to make up for the cost of those lost materials? Well, that is the topic of this week's Planning for Profit Minute. To look at the impact of lost materials, it's actually a really simple process. It's easy to do. All you need to do is to simply take the cost of those materials. Right, so we look at it and say, let's say there was a $50 worth of parts that were either damaged or lost or not accounted for on a job. For whatever reason, I paid for them, I can't use them, or I'm not going to get paid for them in one way, shape, or form. Well, again, how much will you have to sell to make up the cost of that $50 worth of parts and materials? Well, the formula, again, is actually fairly simple. All you need to do is take the cost of that part divided by your company's overall net profit. Now, again, I want to be clear, not the net profit of the specific department, because your company as a whole is not going to make as much money because of the fact that we didn't account for this materials in this particular department. So I want to use the entire company's net profit. So let's say in our particular company, our average net profit is 3%. Now, I use 3% because that is the national average for net profit of a company. Now, that's an accounting net profit. In a lot of cases, right, if we actually looked at it from a cash flow perspective, it's actually less than that. But we'll use 3%. Now, you might say, yeah, but my net profit is significantly higher than that. I'm still going to encourage you to use 3%. And here's the reason why. The point of this exercise is not to show your team members how much money you're making. The point of this exercise is to show them how much it costs if they don't account for every single part that they're using on a job itself. And so I'm going to use the national average. Right, so I'm going to say our net profit is 3%. So we'll simply take the cost of that part, which was $50, divided by my 3%. Now again, not times 3%, but divided by 3%. Right, so divided by 0.03 to come up with a total of $1,666.67. And again, what I'm saying is you will need to sell another $1,666 worth of parts and pieces and labor and materials and jobs just to make up the cost of the part that wasn't accounted for. And oh, by the way, the net profit on that next $1,600 will be zero because what you would have made went to cover the costs that weren't accounted for on that previous job. Now, I can use this formula for almost anything, right? This was $50 worth of stuff that was damaged or missing, right? What about, right, if it was $250, right? Maybe it was a thermostat, it's a control or something like that was $250. It's been rolling around the back of the truck for the last 6 months and now it's scratched up or damaged, right? How much would we have to sell on that one? Well, I simply take my $250 divided by 3%, and it would tell me that I would need to, at that point, sell an additional $8,333. Now, you might be going, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Well, do the math backwards. If you sold $8,300 worth of parts and pieces and materials, right? Maybe it was an install or whatever the case was. $8,300 and you're making a net profit of 3%. What is 3% of $8,300? It's $250. So again, the net profit on that next job would be zero because the profit you would have made went to cover the cost of this material that was damaged. Let's take it a little bit farther. You did a job and you lost $1,500 on the job. Right? I hear salespeople all the time saying, well, I'll make it up on the next one. Well, will you? Right? Because quite honestly, if I lost $1,500 on this job, how much more do I need to sell? Because again, I have to invest my entire team to get another job sold and installed and collected before I'm going to recover the $1,500. And if my average profit is 3%, $1,500 divided by that 3% means I'm going to need to sell another $50,000 just to cover the cost of that $1,500 loss on that last job. Now, this is absolutely worth sharing with your team. If you want a little bit more information about it, I created an 8.5-minute video out on our YouTube channel. You can get to it simply by scanning this QR code. It'll take you right out to that video. What I encourage you to do is to watch the video a couple of times and then walk through the examples with your team and have them do the math. Don't do it for them, right? Now, in this case, I put it on the screen for you. What I would first do is simply tell them, hey, you have $50 worth of stuff not accounted for. How much more do you think we need to sell to cover that $50? I will promise you they will give you answers between $100 and $500. And then you make them do the math. And what's going to happen is they're going to do something like they're going to have their device, right, their phone, and they'll pull it out and they'll do the math and they'll go, nah, right? What did you just come up with? What did you just delete? Because odds are they're not going to believe how much this impacts your company. Use this to your advantage. Train your team with it. And that is this week's Planning for Profit Minute.